We are joined by a couple of guys in a moment who came under his influence. Sean Casey sending this out via Twitter. Lost a great one today. Grant Jackson was like a second father to me growing up in his house with Grant Jr. Well, miss you, Buck. Thanks for everything. R.I.P., my friend. Yeah, he impacted a lot of careers as a teammate and a lot of careers as a coach, including those of our next two guests. When Mike Harkey and Joe Girardi came up together as young Cubs in the 80s, hard to remember that you guys were actually around in the 80s, but you were, as we were. They both came under the influence of Grant Jackson. Thanks for coming on and sharing some stories with us today, guys. Hey, Joe, let's start with you. Tell us about the first time you met Grant and what he meant to you.
Well, Grant was our Double-A pitching coach. And, you know, Grant was a guy that always had your back and had a love for the game. And me and Hark, you know, had a chance to work with him and have some stories. And, you know, Hark was his prized possession in 1988. You know, he was a first-round pick. He threw hard 95, 96. And Grant always had his back. So we're playing this game, and Hark's having a hard time on the mound. And he keeps landing, and he keeps falling down. And Grant goes out and says, you know, can the grounds crew come out and fix the mound? And the ground crew said, there's nothing we can do during the game. He's just going to have to figure it out. So all of a sudden, Grant disappears. He goes down the right field line, comes back with a shovel, a tamper, and a rake, and walks out to the mound and starts tearing it up. And all of a sudden, the ground crew runs out and says, no, oh, no, we can do it. But I think that just shows you how he had his players' backs and how much he cared for his players. And we loved him. I mean, he was so much fun.
Oh, man, that's cool stuff. Hey, Hark, you were the prized possession. I caught that, Joe. I caught that.
Prized possession there. That's right.
He got a shot in at you. So talk to us about, you know, those guys when they traveled. I played with Frank Howard. He didn't carry much in his suitcase when he traveled. What was Grant like when he traveled?
No, Grant was the best. I mean, we traveled, obviously, by bus, and Grant had this big briefcase that you would think that the Double-A pitching coach had all of this top secret information in there. But when he opened it up, the only thing that was in there was a liter of vodka, a quart of cranberry juice, a bag of Lay's potato chips, and one bottle of Tabasco sauce. That's all we had in there. So it was always great because he would open that thing up while we were playing Pluck. And it was always me and Grant Jackson against Jim Essien and Joe Girardi. And I had no idea how to play Pluck back then, and I would just get yelled at the whole time on the bus.
Joe, you pick up from there, man. Go ahead.
Pitchers versus catchers. But so June 27th in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania was the Double-A All-Star game, right? So we go play the Double-A All-Star. Jim Essien and Grant Jackson are the coaches. Mike Tyson is fighting in Atlantic City that night. So we win the game, I think, 2-1. It's a really quick game. Grant and Esco and our trainer decide that they're going to go and watch the fight. So they race over to watch the fight. They sit down in their seats. Jim Essien decides he's going to go get a Coke and a hot dog. By the time he gets back, the fight is over. Right? Mike Tyson drops Spinks in a second. So they spend the night. They drive back to Pittsfield, Mass, where we are. And Grant tells the story that he gets pulled over driving. He's speeding, right? So Grant was so proud of his days in Pittsburgh. And, you know, obviously that's where he made his home. So as a police officer comes around, to ask for his license and registration, Grant has his World Series ring on, and he puts it on the door so the police officer can see it. It starts tapping like the door so the police officer can continue to hear it. Needless to say, Grant didn't get a ticket. The police officer just told him to slow down. And, you know, he had such a love for life. And I think Mike and I wanted to do this to honor Grant and thank him. You know, he used to bring his son, Grant Jr., with him in Double-A, and Sean Casey would go with Grant Jr., right? So I just remember catching in Cleveland when I was with the Yankees, and here comes this 24-year-old kid up to pinch hit, and Sean Casey goes, "Do you remember me?" And those kids were around all the time in the clubhouse, taking ground balls, hitting, and it was Sean Casey, and it was just, Grant took him under his wing and helped him become a big league player.
Yeah, he said he was his second father. He talks about that a lot. So So, Hark, what was your relationship like? What did Grant Jackson mean to you, and would you have got to the big leagues without him?
I don't think so. The big thing about Grant by far was probably my most influential pitching coach that I had ever had. I think he taught me how to be, gave me a little bit more of a competitive edge when I went out there and pitched. That, like, his biggest thing was these guys are trying to take food off your table. He used to tell me that all the time. He would use words that I can't use, obviously, on live TV, but he was huge with that. He was huge with teaching me how to use my fastball, which I think is kind of turned into a lost art. And I think he helped me get to the big leagues a lot faster than I think I would have gotten there without him.
Hey, what about from a coaching standpoint, guys? Because, you know, somebody who you played for and then you end up being coaches and managers yourselves, what from his coaching days did you take with you to what you apply now, Joe?
The importance of competing and the importance of backing players and always being there. You know, that story of him going to get the rake and the shovel and the tamper himself just showed, I got your back, man. I'm going to take care of you. And I think it's important because if players don't trust you, they're never going to hear anything that you say. And that was what we all trusted Grant Jackson. And that was, you know, what I loved about him. And you talk about being competitive. So in Double-A, I separated my shoulder and I was trying to come back in the month of August. And I think Buck was 46 years old. And I needed to get like rehab at bats. And Grant said, I'll pitch to you. And he was throwing 85, cutting it, sinking it, change ups, trying to get me out, wearing me out, breaking my bat. And I'm like, I don't know if this is good for me or bad for me because he's crushing my confidence. He's 46 years old. But he would do anything to help his players get to the big leagues, and that's who he was.
And Mike, obviously you've been a pitching coach all these years, and you're still now. So what about relating closely as a pitching coach?
Well, just the sheer honesty is what I appreciated the most from him, and I think that's one of the things that I took from him as I became a pitching coach. I think pitchers, even athletes, appreciate a coach or a person after a relationship is developed that you share your honest opinions with them. I think it makes us better as athletes, makes us better as people, that we're able to be honest with them so that they're able to make the proper adjustments.
Mike, I know that the influence that Grant had on you, we can see it in the shot, man. You got like 6 jars of hot sauce behind your red shirt.
I see it, yeah.
In honor of Buck, right here.
Hey, guys, thanks for joining us. What a great tribute to somebody who influenced your careers and a guy, everything we're reading about Grant Jackson today, all of his teammates from that 79 team, they all say he was a guy that just never got enough credit, and I think you did him right tonight. So thanks for the tribute. Thanks for taking some time with us. We hope to catch up with you under more pleasant circumstances when the season begins shortly. Thanks, guys.
All right, guys.
Thanks, guys.